Good. Good morning, Director Paulo. It is 9 o'clock, and I'll turn it to you if you want to do a roll call. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will do a roll call for quorum. Commissioner Meyer?
Here.
Commissioner Racines?
Here.
Commissioner Naves?
Here.
Commissioner Pope?
Here.
Commissioner Revel?
Here.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Chairman Gordon?
I am here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum and a full house.
Very good.
So
Please proceed.
thank you. Quick announcements. We have sign-in sheets outside of the room. Please do sign in if you are here in person, and I will read our disclaimer. Key decisions pertaining to the Wyoming Stable Token Initiative will be made by the commissioners of the Stable Token Commission or the state legislature in public meetings such as this. Further, the only commissioners are those appointed by statute, the governor, or a majority vote of the commission. At this time, the Frontier Stable Token issued by the commission, also called the FRNT or Front Token, is now available for purchase by the public on Kraken, a Wyoming domiciled cryptocurrency exchange. A link to the listing page for Front is on our website's homepage. The Front Token has been deployed on mainnet Arbitrum, Avalanche, Base, Ethereum, Hedera, Optimism, Polygon, and Solana blockchains, and smart contract addresses are published on the commission's website. Any centralized exchange claiming to sell or distribute Front or Wyoming stable tokens besides Kraken should be considered fraudulent. Caution is advised for users looking to source Front from decentralized exchanges. Please do not attempt to purchase tokens from unauthorized sources. Information outside of these public meetings should only be considered factual and legitimate if it is distributed through our official channels. At this time, these are limited to our website at stabletoken.wyo.gov, the Wyoming Legislature website at wyoleg.gov, and our social media channels with the @WyoStable username on Twitter, YouTube, GitHub, and Warpcast. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a brief announcement on a recent event.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before we address today's agenda, I would like to make an announcement and offer a moment of reflection. Unfortunately, on July 5th, Stephen Lupien passed away after a lengthy fight with brain cancer. Steve founded and served as the director of the University of Wyoming Center for Blockchain and Digital Innovation and created a first-in-the-nation interdisciplinary minor in blockchain technology, which he taught as a professor. Director Lupien was a driving force in many of the state's early legislative efforts around digital assets, also starting and building the annual Wyoming Blockchain Stampede, now going into its 9th year. On a personal note, after moving to Wyoming in 2021, with my startup, Steve was one of the first supporters we had, another East Coast transplant who was always willing to promote those who themselves were building in the state. Before my tenure with the commission, Director Lupien and the CBDI prepared preliminary research and presentations on the use cases for the Wyoming stable token, and his students tagged in on the initial blockchain selection exercise before our team was fully built out. Beyond blockchain, Steve was a community builder, motorcycle rider and rebuilder, avid chef, and a big personality. He is survived by his daughter Abigail, his 2 granddaughters, as well as his partner, Caitlin Long. On behalf of the commission, I've extended condolences to his family and offered our colleagues at the University of Wyoming the support of our team during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. I think all of us are touched by the loss of Steve. He was such a visionary, and take just a moment of silence. Thank you. Again, our condolences go to Caitlin and his family, but I think his leadership will live on. And with that, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's anything anybody wants to say. No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to review today's agenda, we'll have our standard recurring updates and approvals, including meeting minutes, the budget review, blockchain selection exercise, and our stable token industry update. We'll have several discussion topics on which we don't expect to have any actions or motions, but perhaps just a deeper conversation as is warranted. We will have a rulemaking update on our reserves management and token management rules, for which the public comment session just ended. Flipping over, we have 2 new policies to present with the commission and discuss, hopefully for approval and adoption. We'll discuss next steps, upcoming meetings and events, and then public comment. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn to the meeting minutes. I am happy to review these at the 10,000-foot level, or we'll leave it to the commission's desires if they would like to approve those outright.
Members of the commission, are there any comments, questions, changes to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the minutes from
June
June
19th.
19th, 2026.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Next up, we have the monthly budget review as of June 30th. So this will be the final time we review the financials in this summary format, again, derived from the Wolves platform, as we'll be transitioning to GASB-style financial reporting and monthly statements. So you've got your big and cleaner sheet of paper here. On the back, you have the June balances. As usual, one of the main drivers of our monthly expenses is salaries and benefits. You'll notice in that second line, although we've been consistent since January for employer paid benefits, there is a slight uptick of roughly $1,600. That is due to the encumbrance for the month of July. So as we go through these line items, we'll see that in certain instances, because June 30th is the end of the state's fiscal year, July 1st starts the new one, there are certain line items that are encumbered to make sure funds are available or paid to make sure coverage continues on into the next month. So we do have a slight uptick in that employer paid benefits. So I always flag that because that's been a fairly consistent line item for a good long time. No in-state travel for the team in June, but we did have some travel to DC. Myself, our Chief Information Security Officer, Keith Lawhorn, and Chief Financial Officer, Joseph Saldana, were in Washington, D.C. for the Digital Chamber Roundtable. They hosted us for a discussion with many state luminaries in the industry, as well as the Wyoming White House State Leadership Conference. And we also had Stephanie Chan as our Senior Business Project Management Analyst attend the Montana Blockchain Summit for a speaking role there as well. In terms of support services, we have a $256 line item in communications fees and advertising. That was for shipping travel laptops to team resources. We do, as we've recognized over the course of the biennium, a fair bit of travel. When we go international, we do prefer to have laptops that are don't have all of our files and materials on them. So we've set up with our relationship with ETS for each member of the team, laptops that can be used for travel that won't bring all the sensitive information everywhere we go. So those have now been distributed amongst team members. Moving on to the next line item, hardware, software, and intangibles. This is another line item, a bit of a uptick from last month. This is the monthly recurring charge for all of our software as a service platforms, ×2 again for the encumbrance. So that's about half of it. The other half was our filing with the USPTO for an allegation of use as we continue to bring forth the trademark filings for Wyoming Stable Token, FRNT, Frontier Stable Token, and all of that. Moving on to the next one. This got captured in miscellaneous items, the $2,700 charge. That is our presence at Cheyenne Frontier Days. We'll talk more about what that looks like in a few minutes. But this is for the space, the booth, the tables, all the rentals and equipment to have a presence there. And we will be there for 3 days. But again, more on that activation shortly. IT services, again, May and June, IT and telecom, but also encumbrance for the month of July. And then we have a fairly standard smattering of vendor expenses in that final 900 series. So now that we've reached the end of the biennium, we have spent in total just about $4.5 million of the $5.8 million appropriated to the commission. It's about 77.5% of the total budget. The commission therefore has a remaining budget of $1.3 million for the remainder of BFY 27, which is now complete. So that is going to be part of our carryover into the next biennium. I've got more to say on that in just a moment, but before I do, wanted to pause for any questions on June's expenses.
Are there questions for the director? Director, sort of anticipatory of later conversations and certainly not really germane for most immediate conversation, but something that's on my mind is we have a process by which we can, I guess, handle things like IT expenses through the quote unquote SWICAP. If we separate out, which I think would have to be with a legislative session, do we have an idea of what that potential burden to the budget might be?
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're asking numerically, I would say so you're referring specifically, I believe, to, let's say, the Google Suite and things like that.
Google
So,
Suite,
yeah, just to be very specific, because there's a number of numbers floating around on this related to IT. So expenses for laptops, software as a service, mobile devices,
right.
those are all handled separately and invoiced to us. So no matter where we are in that process, we're handling that. In terms of the SWICAP, I candidly don't have that number off the top of my head. I will make sure we find that out for you.
Okay.
But I believe the only charge that we would be receiving that is not part of the monthly outlay we look at would be the Google Suite. So again, Drive, email, everything
Okay.
else we pay for kind of a la carte in the existing format.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Again, I've given you the detail. We typically don't go through this. If you have any other questions, please let me know. You can see with a little bit more granularity the uptick in the workers' comp, the USPTO charges, but I'll leave that one to rest. What I wanted to have just discuss next on the agenda, and I don't have a full reconciliation for it at this point in time, but our agency is in the process of reconciling the final BFY 25 budget and BFY 27 carryover with the A&I team. So what that means is, and to be very clear, we've been appropriated by the legislature in the budget bill $4 million for BFY 27. We have received and retained those funds. Also in the budget bill was the carryover of any unobligated, unencumbered expenses from this current biennium. They would allow us to carry that over into the next, which also has a couple of additions to it, i.e. interest income earned on our balance over the last biennium as well. So we are working through the reconciliation with A&I. We are aligned on the total expenditure down to the penny. That's that $4.5 million we just spoke about. And we are agreed on the unobligated spending authority of $1.3 million and change. We've also zeroed out all the encumbrances, so that is handled as well. Where we have a slight deviation is in what they refer to as Fund 204. That's our administration account. We are showing a balance of $1.69 million. They are showing a balance of $1.68 million. So this is about a $10,000 to $14,000 difference there. We believe that that's just a simple recalculation item based on the interest earned over the course of the biennium. We want to make sure we're calculating it right. There's really no other line item to point to, but just wanted to be transparent about that, because once we get that reconciled, we'll be able to receive a check for that carryover, which we would expect to then be about, again, just under $1.7 million added into the coffers for the commission. So we'd be operating on a budget of about $5.7, $5.8 million for the next biennium, which is what we were appropriated in this biennium. So the math all kind of works out at the end of the day. Again, I've got no concerns about this reconciliation, but it is the 15th and we wanted to, yes, it was 15th. We are at a point where we want to get this done sooner rather than later. So this is kind of a top priority for us, just to make sure we get the math right and move forward from there. I'm happy to answer any questions on that topic.
Questions, Commissioner Pope?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we have to get this right specifically because we are undergoing audit for the fiscal year, correct?
To the chair, Commissioner Pope, the audit is certainly part of it. This team takes great pride. I mean, reconciliations, we typically did get down to the penny. So we just want to make sure that that's part of it. And again, the handover from general fund to us, we want to make sure that we're getting everything right.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the next topic then, the Q3 2026 blockchain selection exercise. As we discuss every month, it is a quarterly process. First month is an assessment of the criteria. Second month is the preliminary discussions with first-party resources. And then the third month is our own efforts to verify data provided by those first parties and score the blockchains. So last quarter, as a reminder, we did have the addition of the concept of partner blockchain, i.e., if we're working with an engaged third party and they've got technology that meets our binary criteria, we can onboard to their blockchain. We have not done that yet, but just wanted to reiterate that. And as of last month, we did add Monad and Tempo as candidate blockchains based on the binaries and the scores that they were able to achieve. That being said, for this month, first month of Q3, our agency resources are not recommending any criteria changes at this point in time. So from our perspective, we can move on to the discussion with first-party sources. We do reach out every month to individuals, whether they're on blockchain foundations, whether they're in developer communities. We give them their data back to them as we've captured in the past, ask for any updates specifically, whether it's around metrics, new vendor integrations that would move them forward in our binary assessments, and we coordinate with them on a fairly one-on-one basis. But for now, no new criteria recommended, and happy to stand for any questions on that particular item.
Commissioner Pope.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask your indulgence and back to the financial side? Wow, yeah, just
Sure.
in mulling things over. Director Apollo, can you do me a favor, please, and go over the schedule of activities for the audit and when that is due back to the state for its comprehensive financial audit itself, and what does that process look like?
Through the chair, Commissioner Pope, and I will probably phone a friend during some part of this response, who may know the schedule of the audit better than I do off the top of my head. But we are looking to bring this process forward relatively quickly because this will be our first kind of external audit. In the past, although this agency has been considered a component unit for the purposes of the state's annual comprehensive financial report or the ACFR, we've been immaterial. Now, whether it's for a dollar for dollar perspective or just a operational perspective, we're going to be material from here on out. We will be a component unit. So we need to have our own independent audit that then reports into the ACFR. I believe that those are due to the auditor's office at some point in early November. We're trying to not get it to the auditor's office any later than early October. And we'll intend to start sending financials and PBC documents over to the network firm who is our auditor before the end of this month.
Commissioner Racinas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So as a separately audited component unit, the Stable Token Commission will now join the likes of UW, the Business Council, Wyoming Health Insurance Pool, et cetera, from whom we receive external audit reports. There's not a hard due date. There's always a little wiggle room in that schedule, but ideally we have asked to have that by the middle of October. And then that gives a little wiggle room if something goes awry, which it almost always does, and particularly in a first year audit. There, not that there's anything wrong, just it's new is always harder. So.
And through the chair, just another quick response to that, and thank you for the backup there, Commissioner Racinas, and Commissioner Pope, to you. Reiterating the point, we want to get this moving sooner rather than later. This is the first government agency issuing a stable coin and reporting on it. So we're going to have some questions to figure out along the way. perhaps some correspondence with the AICPA, who themselves is putting out guidance, as you're well aware, because we've had those conversations. So we want to make sure we are, we put transparency and that foundation above everything else in this program. And I intend to do that with this exactly as well.
Yeah, I see Joe Saldana has gone off. Anything you want to add?
I think the executive director, Anthony Apollo, has well articulated the process. We are engaged with the network firm at this moment. We are prepared to meet with them next week to go through the list of documents that they're looking for, as well as contacts within the state of Wyoming surrounding the treasurer's office, payroll, and the auditor's office as well. Just to make sure that all the numbers that we are processing through our QuickBooks and financials are coming from an external source and can be validated.
Thank you. Commissioner Pope.
Just wanted to thank you for your indulgence in that. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So clearing blockchain selection exercise, I want to make sure we don't have any questions on that. I'll give that a beat.
Any questions on blockchain selection process? Hearing none, you can proceed.
Thank you. So we'll move to the stable token industry update. We continue to operate at about a $300 billion market cap, up over 20% since the same time last year. Monthly transfer volumes for stablecoins are about $5.59 trillion. That is actually down over the last month, about 18%, but keeping in mind that we're coming down off of all-time highs. So when we've had a bit of a dip in the cryptocurrency sector, when that happens, typically there's a flight to stablecoins as a matter of being stable. So that is not overall surprising. We'll continue to keep an eye on that, but that is not a surprise. It's not a surprising trend, but I will note that when we start talking about, let's say in February, when stablecoin monthly transfer volumes actually surpass that of the automated clearinghouse, we may not be back up that level. That might not be sustained. Now, it probably will get back up there again in due time, but that may be a bit of a blip during a bear market, and we'll see how that kind of shakes out over time. Moving forward to our kind of newsroom here, from a domestic perspective, regarding the Genius Act on stablecoin issuance, the act passed just under a year ago. Actually, the 18th is the one-year anniversary of the Genius Act being signed into law, which means that the agencies responsible for its involved with it or responsible for its enforcement all have to have their proposed rules filed. So we've already seen that from the FDIC, OCC, NCUA, Treasury. We're waiting to see what the Federal Reserve comes up with. And while, again, there's no explicit carve out in the Genius Act for supervision of states and state issuers, we always want to be aligned with best practices. So we will continue to keep an eye on all of that. Regarding the Clarity Act, which is, again, the market structure bill, still at a bit of an impasse in the Senate, particularly around an ethics provision and stablecoin rewards. So there's a floor vote targeted for next week. Passage before the August recess remains uncertain. And for those who tuned in to the select committee meeting the other day, did hear a little bit about that from Mr. Chris Land in Senator Lums's office. Two more quick notes domestically. One is there is now a central bank digital currency prohibition in place until 2030. It was actually passed as part of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. That made it in there. So while that was not signed by the president, it did pass into law without his signature. Provision bars the Federal Reserve from issuing a retail CBDC or substantially similar digital asset through December 31st of 2030. And then the SEC put out documentation on regulation crypto, which is interpretive guidance, creates a bit of a taxonomy for digital assets. So this is something that I will continue discussing with members or co-chairs of the Select Committee on Blockchain. If you recall, some of the discussion leading up into the budget session this year was around a desire to perhaps update the taxonomy that we have in our own Wyoming statutes around digital assets. My testimony in September cautioned that that may be a bit preemptive because we still don't have the federal version of things. We don't want to do work at the state level to map onto a federal regime that may not exist yet. just now we're seeing that kind of come into play. So I think that was the right call to hold off and see what happens with both the federal government and its agencies before we do anything with that from a state perspective. Any questions on the domestic side of things?
Are there any questions, any comments? Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, I guess looking at it, as far as I'm concerned, is that the federal government shouldn't be able to tax our revenue. Are they contemplating actually taxing our revenue off of the stable token? I mean, because, otherwise it's an investment and they will just characterize it as an investment earnings. So I'm just wondering what you've heard in the wind.
Through the chair, Mr. Treasurer, no one's reached out to me about that yet. What I will say is, from a tax perspective, and Commissioner Pope has brought this up in many meetings, for stable coins generally, one of the things that's being worked on, and actually that Senator Lummis has put forth, is legislation that would treat stable coins, or let's say Genius Act stable coins, as cash equivalents, right? So you wouldn't have necessarily taxation on that. Regarding the reserves, it's certainly a conversation for us to have. But we just simply haven't, no one's reached out to us on that one quite yet.
And Director, Mr. Treasurer, when I was in that office, there was a similar question that came up somewhere else. And if I remember correctly, it's in a case that involves Saratoga Springs and the water that's bottled there. And I think the case was established that the federal government can tax state revenues, but the state cannot tax the federal government. So you might look at that particular citation. So I remember being very disappointed.
I guess on minerals, they take more than their fair share. So from that perspective, yeah, but to actually tax the revenue that they pay us on their debt instrument would be unconscionable.
I agree. I'm not a definitive authority on it. I just remember that particular issue.
Yeah, and Mr.
Thanks.
Chairman, Commissioner Meyer, I would agree that perhaps is a bit circuitous if it was to shake out that way. But we will certainly dig and let you know. Okay, so just quickly in the sake of time, moving on to some of the news from around the world. As I flagged in our last month's discussion, we're seeing some activity in Japan and South Korea. In Japan, and actually this goes back to Commissioner Meyer's question, they're looking to shift taxable gains on crypto from 55% to 20%, based on a recent vote that's not been fully promulgated yet, but the expectation is that that maneuver would really open up the Japanese economy when it comes to cryptocurrency and other on-chain assets. In South Korea, they continue developing their Digital Asset Basic Act. They've got a roadmap that expects legislation on that in 2026. Again, Japan's already had digital asset legislation in South Korea. This is their first go round on it. So we're continuing to monitor that. And then in the UK, there was established a US-UK transatlantic task force for the markets of the future, bit of a mouthful, which published recommendations to promote growth and innovation on capital markets and digital assets. So there was a joint statement on stablecoins that they put forth about having a dynamic cross-border stablecoin activity that would require the Bank of England to do a little bit of catch up to where we are. But that is something I also wanted to flag because we've looked at other parts of Europe and they're in the EU, they're also readdressing their digital asset policy through the markets and crypto asset regulation framework. And I'm going to quickly just segue directly into some of the current issuers. So on July 10th, Circle received OCC approval to establish First National Digital Currency Bank, operating as Circle National Trust. So we will expect to see more of these digital asset companies get federal trust charters. There was also a consortium announced called OpenUSD, dollar-backed stablecoin, ostensibly supported by 140 or more technology firms, Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, Coinbase, Google, all named in there. I will note that they have not actually released anything yet. It's a plan to issue by the end of the year. Large consortiums can work. They can also be fairly difficult to align that many members. And I will say that a number of members, and this is public information, who are named as part of that consortium have already pushed back saying that they're not part of it. So it's quite interesting to see where things will go with this OpenUSD token and the Open Standard Consortium. And then finally, SWIFT announced on July 9th that its blockchain-based shared ledger is ready for initial use with 17 early adopter banks. But I will flag, as we've talked about in the past with some of these larger institutions, these are not stable coins. These are tokenized deposits that are not intended for retail use. They're not meant to be self-custodied. They're meant for interbank settlements behind the scenes. But SWIFT obviously is a massive organization, so we'd expect to see a lot of activity picking up there, and we'll continue to monitor that as well. Any questions on this month's update?
Any questions? I don't see any.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with no other questions, I will move on to our discussion topics. First on the list is meeting cadence review. I did flag this in an email. The suggestion here would be to start meeting on alternating months. So my recommendation would be to hold our August meeting. I think that'll be important for the purposes of reviewing the GASB financials and discussing our traction momentum on our inaugural audit. I would suggest that we skip September. We do have a number of events going on that month as well, so that would be a bit of a reprieve. Meet in October, skip November around the Thanksgiving holiday, and then meet again in December. Justification being, we're at a point now where while we do have, some smaller policies that we are looking to approve, typically at this point, we are presenting, monthly cuts of similar information and smaller revisions. We could certainly look to put that kind of work in a consent package and deliver that to the commission on a monthly basis, but have these in-person meetings on an every other month cadence, and perhaps free up some schedules and some time of our commissioners. So I don't think we need any kind of formal motion on that because we don't have any kind of formal documentation or policy dictating monthly meetings, but to just want to open that up for conversation amongst the commissioners and assess the level of comfort with that model going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Director. I would also note if there is something that comes up of an immediate nature, we can always call something with appropriate notification. But is there any discussion on that topic? Yeah, Commissioner Pope and then Commissioner Meyer.
Just real quickly, should we consider a Laramie meeting during the Stampede as almost more as a public outreach? Just a question.
So through the chair, Commissioner Pope, we are expecting to already have a presentation and a public, it doesn't need to necessarily be, not intended to be a meeting of the commission, but we have been invited to speak at the 9th annual Wyoming Blockchain Stampede. So we will have a presence there regardless. And I would also believe that the select committee will be meeting there too. So you'd be kind of counter-programming yourself at a certain point. You would certainly be over-indexed. So I'm trying to preserve your schedule on that one.
That is appreciated.
And it's not even tax season.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, just to be clear, which dates are we meeting now? Because I didn't quite hear you. I need a speaker over the top here like we have in the auditorium.
Well, through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, I appreciate that. I don't think I actually gave you the dates specifically, which would certainly
But they'll
help
be
with that.
forthcoming, and the months are like October and December.
Right. So we would.
Okay. All right.
So to be clear, these meetings have all been on the calendar since early this year. We typically do the third Thursday of every month, minus 1 or 2 meetings where we know we're going to have conflicts with events proactively. So they're already on the calendar. We would be
We just
meeting.
skip November.
We would skip November.
Okay. All right.
So we'd meet, I believe, August 13th. Thank you, Stephanie. We'd skip September. October, we'd meet on the 22nd.
Okay.
And then skip November. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. And then on December, I believe that would be the 17th.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Further questions? Further comments? Hearing none. Thank you for that.
So next on the docket is a quick recap of my testimony earlier this week with the Select Committee on Blockchain, Financial Innovation, and Digital Innovation Technology. I think I got that right. This was, again, the June meeting intended for Sheridan that was held in Casper Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. I had several hours of testimony on Tuesday morning. In that regard, a few things to highlight. One was just a general status update. Because we did not have a fifth meeting of the Select Committee last year, there was just a little bit more ground to cover and bring everybody up to speed, although this commission, this body is obviously aware of all those updates. In terms of their points of interest and questions that were asked, a lot of it focused on the go-to-market and scalability. I walked them through both our bottom-up and top-down perspectives, bottom-up being the local work we're doing, especially with our enterprise project manager, Stephanie Chan, going kind of county by county to universities, training people on blockchain 101, getting them spun up with wallets. And then some of the top-down work that I'm focused on trying to bring institutions onto our platform, potentially other states, and move from there. We did talk a bit about interagency support. One of the things I shared with the body was my preliminary analysis, which our CFO, Joseph Saldana, has also been working on around what impediments there are for state agencies to use a stable token, particularly if in statute their financial remit is specified as using monies or warrants or cash, and we are not those things. We've talked previously, for example, about in the Treasurer's Office, the unclaimed property division, which can handle intangible assets, but not necessarily virtual currencies. So there was a bit of a back and forth on that between whether we'd move forward with something looking like cash equivalency, which would certainly make things a lot easier, but could have some impediments there, or continuing to go agency by agency and make potential statutory updates to accommodate use of a stable token or another virtual currency. Around that effort, Senator Rothfuss, who serves as one of the co-chairs, recommended setting up a working group amongst our team, the University of Wyoming, the Office of Tourism, YDOT, potentially some of the county clerks or treasurers who've been involved with this. We had Joel Shell from Converse testify, and just rather than try to boil the ocean all at one time, pick a few and just really get into the weeds of what the impediments are from their side. Because we could read statute and see what they are, but understanding what they are is a different story. So carving out a few of those groups, moving forward to make sure we get everybody on board. And then if statutory updates are required, the legislature can move towards those appropriately ahead of the 2027 legislative session. There was also discussions around other states' utilization of stable tokens, walk them through the developments with the New Hampshire Stable Token Study Commission. Delaware now has a blockchain task force that I've testified in front of. Maryland has a blockchain task force that our CISO, Keith Lawhorn, testified in front of on Monday, and our CFO, Mr. Saldana, will be in front of later this afternoon. And then we worked through some of the commentary on the bill draft that we reviewed last month. But before I get into that, I'll pause for the first tranche. If there's any questions or comments or discussion on what's been discussed so far around interagency support, statutory reviews, cash equivalency, wanted to pause there.
Thank you, Director. Were any of the other commissioners there with you, or?
So through the chair, Commissioner Pope and Commissioner Revel do both serve as liaisons to the Select Committee. I did not see anybody else from the commission online, but just as a quick FYI, I'm aware that I've testified alongside Flavia, Commissioner Naves, which brings us up to 3 commissioners. So I always read a disclaimer at the beginning on top of my other disclaimer to make sure we don't have a 4th commissioner and accidentally need to, we actually hit quorum during another meeting. So we've always flagged that. I don't know if Commissioner Naves or others were on the line for the rest of that testimony from the Select Committee.
Any additional color to offer?
The cash equivalency question is the one I, of course, have the most interest in. And for me, most of the statutes, as Director Apollo indicated, say that you have to have cash, money, various words basically saying you have to have actual money in order to be able to use it. The term cash equivalency is basically an accounting term. Short-term investments that equal cash. And so there are two ways to go about it. As Director Apollo said, you either have to, even if you define the stable token as a cash equivalent, which would avoid the issue as a short-term cash equivalent, it would avoid calling it actual cash for constitutional purposes, but then there would have to be some sort of opinion from that says that it meets the definitions in each statute, or you have to go statute by statute and change the acceptable form of remuneration, the acceptable form of payment to a cash or cash equivalent. So there's a kind of a tug of war there in figuring out which way to go. So that's I think, did I cover that well?
So through the chair, Commissioner Pope, that is indeed the tension there. I think if we were going to go the cash equivalency route, and this is something that was brought up during the legislative session, during the amendments being made to the Stable Token Act. And I will say my personal capacity, I did flag that. I perceive that as a risk. Referring to this, the Wyoming Stable Token as a cash equivalent to me brings us closer to a constitutional concern, just even verbally and semantically. And I am somewhat concerned about that. I also think it could be more difficult to, if we wanted in the future to establish a yield-bearing stable token, but we said this is cash-like properties, but also offers yield, I think that would be at odds with itself. Again, we could structure, of course, a different product, or the legislature can take that on, but that would probably look a lot different and require more effort to build something novel. And similar to what we talked about with the taxonomy earlier, we're monitoring what's happening at the federal level. Senator Lummis has put a bill forward about this cash equivalency for stable coins that are compliant under the Genius Act, that all have similar backing to them. They've got a federally mandated backing to them. We look substantially similar, but we're also, again, my personal perspective, if state sovereign entities are not included in the Genius Act, well, we're not going to be a Genius compliant stable token, then we may not qualify for that cash equivalency either. So there's a lot of moving pieces here that are quite finicky. And I think that was, it's well understood that more research will need to be done on this topic before we make any kind of call on that. And some of it will be trying to make this assessment while the definition itself is in a shifting bed of sand. From my perspective, I am of the firm belief that going agency by agency, while not the easy way forward, is probably the right way to go. There may be some agencies that would benefit from invoking the ability to use a digital asset writ large as we define it. There may be some where we want to be more targeted and make that a virtual currency as we define it, which is a subset of digital assets in the state of Wyoming. So again, from my perspective, it's going to be a nuanced approach here. And that's my position.
Very good. Commissioner Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the only other thing I wanted to bring up on that is that unless we are able to be defined as a short-term cash equivalent, even for use by banks, it's going to be difficult for them to invest in or buy the stable token and have it be counted as part of their underlying reserves. And I have a slightly different position on it in that there are lots of things that are considered short-term cash equivalents and not considered money. So I think that while the term cash within that statement is I guess somewhat problematic, it is still not money. And that's the difference there, because again, there are lots of things that are considered short-term cash equivalents that are not considered money by anyone.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I think the way you get about this is that you add another fairly inclusive list, but say, including but not limited to, may be used for these purposes in commerce as if it were cash. And or different further definitions that actually allows it to be used in that, and that's the purpose for it. So you have a cash equivalent, lots of them, as you say, but some of them would basically be able to be used, in that, like gold. It can be used, and so you maybe say that can be used in the same manner in which gold is used, and so that's the way you frame it. You put it in a box with lots of windows and doors, and understanding that at the end of the day, it's going to be used just like gold. It's a cash equivalent. It can be used just like cash, but you put those definitions on it, or Christmas tree ornaments, or however you want to characterize it. So you can do it. I'm a little concerned with it actually being used as a reserve in the banking industry, because then you have fractionalization of the token as far as it, and where does that work in the legal framework as far as if it needs to be, for whatever reason, redeemed by a court order, then how do we sort that out? Is it going to be, I guess you may have to say it's going to be subject to court orders exactly as cash is, so those are the things that you want to, I think, define it and be inclusive but not limited.
Thank you. Commissioner Revel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies if the background noise is a little bad here. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I wanted to share a couple of thoughts on this topic. I think the characterization of it as a tension is a good one. I think it's kind of maybe a better way of saying it is it's a risk-reward trade-off. I think there's a very clear understanding of the difference between cash and cash equivalents. Cash equivalents is a very commonly used term that will refer to treasuries and short-term money market instruments. And I don't think it would be hard to argue that can be conflated with currency or cash. On the flip side, I don't think by defining it in our own statutes, we will have the ability to change anyone's view on whether this is acceptable as a cash equivalent versus a stable token. The counterparties will do their own analysis. The credit rating agencies will do their own analysis. The banking regulators will do their own analysis, and they will characterize this in whatever risk bucket they choose, regardless of what we label it in our own statutes. So I think it just becomes a question of what actual benefit are we guaranteed by defining this as a cash equivalent, and then weighing that against the risk of someone conflating cash and cash equivalents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I concur. And I think to some degree, from the point of view of banking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Wallace, but some of this is going to be dependent on how the federal government looks at these issues. So, very good. Further comment? If there are none, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just, to close out on the topic, because I think that there's, a number of interesting viewpoints here. We will continue working through this kind of on both sides of it. We'll continue our assessment of, the state's statute in full, agency by agency. And then we'll certainly work with the Attorney General's office. We'll work with our counterparties at Paul Hastings to work through some of these discussions around things like moneyness and what it means. And of course, the developing framework in DC over the course of this interim. So moving on to the next item on the list, business development and growth strategy. So, through these discussions, we've talked a bit about our plan here, bottom up, the top down side of things. We are working a fair number of angles. We do continue to be a small team. And we have been having discussions with several commissioners about how we can scale and trying to think a little bit outside the box on all of this. To give you just a few thoughts, we did look at what it would take to onboard a marketing firm specifically focused on the blockchain side of things. We do have some concerns that would be mostly focused on showing up at events on a global basis. There's no shortage of digital asset events that run all over the world. Not sure if that would be kind of the fit. We did look at a couple of individuals, but my own current thinking is we are likely staring at a near future procurement for a larger advisory firm to work with us on creating robust educational materials, creating stablecoin onboarding modules to get people using the Frontier stable token, and bringing us in front of larger institutions that can benefit from the use of the Wyoming stable token initiative. So that's not a RFP we've drafted for today, but it's something I've discussed with Commissioner Naves and others. I do see she has come off of mute. So with that short preamble, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that Commissioner Naves be recognized.
Thank you. Commissioner Naves.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Governor. And I will ask Joe to back me up when he can. This is a conversation that we have had with Anthony, and I think the effort that the team has put together on education and marketing is important, but is a step to a broader exercise of growth for this project, for the token to actually deliver on its mission, which is to, number one, pay for itself, right, fund the commission, but also support the educational system in Wyoming. We need to have more tokens in circulation, more money in the reserves, period. What we have right now is not sufficient, and it's not really meeting the goal of this project. So marketing is a step, but to Anthony's point, this is attending conferences, and it's great to go around and socialize and talk to people, but that is not winning new issuance. That is not winning new partners. That is not moving the ball forward. In my experience in the industry, you do need a business development professional, someone that has expertise in driving growth, business growth, partnerships, and other opportunities to join the team. That will likely be a firm that has experience and longstanding reputation in the industry of doing that kind of exercise. But I think it's at this point, we have built a token that is at the forefront of technology, is compliant. It is something that the other states are looking at to build and mirror us, but we do not have the market that we should have. Anthony reports on the market for stablecoins on a monthly basis. We are not in that market yet. We are not. So for us to be able to be reporting and actually reaping the benefits, we need to drive growth. And I think that we need to think really seriously about taking the next step on business development. Joe?
Commissioner Revel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to add to Commissioner Naves's comments there. I agree. I am certainly proud of the work that this group has done to build a stablecoin that works in both in terms of technology and compliance. Business development and marketing are the next most critical steps. And at this point, with all due respect to the current commission and the staff, I think that our capabilities skew towards legal and regulatory compliance, governance, and technology. and that either through a third-party engagement, through intentional staff hires, or even through repositioning the composition of this commission, we should look to build our capabilities specifically around a marketing and a business development focus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just I don't disagree. What I would be cautious about, and I suspect that probably the talent is on this existing commission to be able to ferret out what is a good plan versus simply, hiring a firm that is going to do marketing and be of sort of marginal value to the overall endeavor. That is my concern, is that we find and identify exactly what it is we need, and then look for that. I would be happy to have conversations of this commission to sort of identify those things rather than just have, some firm tell us what we already know for a lot of money. Commissioner Meyer.
Essentially, I think we need what I would call a closer. I think Anthony has identified a lot of different opportunities, and his time is taken up with what he has to do on a day-to-day basis, and that's moved the ball down the field quite a little bit. But we do need either a firm or a closer of internally, or perhaps even both, that can actually get the signature on the bottom of the page or the DocuSign signed. And that's a skill that some people have, and there are certain firms, I think, that do that. I think the structure that we would have is more or less like we do on some of our other partners. And that's not to say that the person that we have couldn't be a licensed provider that would be able to essentially be remunerated in any profit sharing program that we've contemplated in other circumstances. But you've got different markets. We need to understand the markets. You've got the domestic market, the international market. You've got long-term, onboarding with white label products. And then you have, a use case where you've got a lot of churn, and you've got to have, the only way you make your money is on the float. So you need something there. But all of those different business plans, use cases, I think, have to be looked at. If you're looking at a firm, it may not, or a partner licensed provider that's working in that area, you may have to have several of them working in different use case areas. So it's just not one closer. It's probably a team of people that actually are I would say more or less on a commission type basis or a revenue sharing basis, because we don't have the budget to go out and pay somebody probably what we would need to pay them to get the result that we would want. Nor, to your point, Mr. Chairman, that if we do open up the checkbook, we can only sign one check, and so we better make sure that we're doing it the right way. So I think we need a way not to actually go down that road, which you said is to open up the checkbook and sign a big check and expect results that are, we just don't know. So I think there's a way that we can negotiate this next step and move it forward. And I think with Navia and Joel, that's a good start in that area, because they've been closer to that particular business than anybody sitting at the diocese today. But we do need to continue to have that oversight. but we need that capacity. It's time to build it out in one way or another. I think what we've done in the past is that you've had a subcommittee that actually worked on that, made recommendations, and worked fairly rapidly toward that, because the opportunities are flying by us right now. We need to basically stake out where we're going to go, look at the ones that we know that we can close on and get them closed, and success breeds success. And the market is huge, but then again, you don't want to be a novelty. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. And further comments? Commissioner Navis.
Thank you, Governor, and I apologize for the background noise because I'm in an airport right now. So Kurt read it right on the nose. We do have the opportunity. We need to be looking how to grow. And while Joel and I have been in the industry and partner with individuals in business development expertise, I myself am not a business development person, nor is Joel. So while we know what we may believe that we know what these folks do, the expertise lie on individuals that actually do that as their profession. And we should be looking to consult with those to advance our commission in the right direction. I believe, again, we have this product that is something that other states are looking at to mirror, and other countries are looking to mirror, yet we are not benefiting from full implementation because we don't have the right strategy for business growth right now. And that's what we're looking to do. So I agree with you, Kurt, that we need to, whatever format that it is, it's a subcommittee within this commission, who it is to think through this and take next steps.
Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, acknowledging all the feedback, and we appreciate the commissioners and working with us. Again, I think we all take great pride in what we built. Again, from a technical perspective, from a compliance perspective, we want to see this thing get used, and we want to see it do a lot of good for the state of Wyoming. So we are open to, whatever combination of skills, of engagements that looks like. And I do want to acknowledge a couple of things that have been touched on. To Commissioner Meyer's point, the reseller model we've adopted, that's going to be part of the process, just a little bit of the growing pains. When we're, as a 5-person agency, trying to onboard large cryptocurrency exchanges, payment processors, that diligence takes a while. We've got a 1-person compliance team. So that is one consideration, right? Is there a way to, rather than thinking about this as marketing, is this a compliance scope increase? But from the marketing side too, I think we're all fairly aligned that, handing the keys over to a marketing firm to go and just try to sell this thing around the world at a bunch of events is probably not the way to go. We want to be embedded in institutions. And I would agree that the way to probably move this forward would be through resuscitation of our procurement subcommittee and working, Mr. Chairman, to your point, very specifically on what the ask is. Because part of the back and forth I've had with Commissioner Naves and others is it doesn't seem to be a one turnkey solution here, right? If we need a firm that is compliance plus marketing plus building educational materials plus technical implementation and support, these are all things that a 5-person team cannot simply deploy at scale. So how do you find the right mix of partners? Because I think it will likely end up being more than one partner. Is it a consortium? But again, I'm asking all these hypotheticals. I think realistically, the goal here is to reconvene the procurement subcommittee, and work through this and some of the other things we have in front of us. We have been tasked with finding some redundancies for support across multiple different functions of the agency. So I think it's well timed now that we've got this thing out the door. We're wrapping up our engagement with Ernst & Young on building out the internal controls, and then that's kind of the tombstone for V1 of procurement. We did 7 concurrent RFPs, and now that work is done, and now it's time to level up with the foundation we built, and quite a strong one, I might add.
Yeah, and Director, I think that makes a lot of sense. I absolutely agree with that, and I do think that these things are connected. So to some degree, in whatever capacity, whether that's procurement, I'm trying to remember our subcommittee status, and I know we've been so busy trying to make things work that some of that has languished a bit. But my sense is we're really talking about two things. Well, maybe three. One is being able to scale up. One is being able to market, and those two things being combined really talks about a business plan that needs to be developed, or a plan of growth. What comes first? How does that affect what comes later, et cetera. So to some degree, if there is that capacity within one of our existing subcommittees, we can take that off month that we just gave ourselves, and kind of try to put a finer point on that. I sense the immediacy, and I completely agree with Commissioner Naves and Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Pope about what that is. But I think it really has to. We're really talking about now building out the business plan.
And just as a quick response to that, Mr. Chairman, we did put together a business plan last year ahead of the, all the biennial hearings, joint appropriations. Business plans are not required in even years. We will be filing an agency report. That's just the one page of bullet points about like where our office is. But CFO Saldana and myself have been working on a business plan. In the background, we do intend to submit that regardless to whichever body, specifically this one, but perhaps the state budget department as well. Because we do feel like there are these myriad different ways to move forward. And we'll need to just start prioritizing some of them. And Joe has some great ideas around pilot programs, limiting what that looks like. And I'm happy to share more details on that once I've personally had a chance to go through more of it with the fine tooth comb. But I can let you know that is all already underway and well underway.
Excellent. It's a great start. And then I think to Commissioner Naves' point, and it's really saying, okay, now we have the target. Let's proceed. Oh, okay. We have a couple things in the chat, Stephanie. I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have things in the chat. That's just Commissioner Naves acknowledging that she needs to leave in about 3 minutes from my clock, or sooner.
Commissioner Naves, for safe travels. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to be dropping off now then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further comments on business development, I'm happy to transition us to the rulemaking update.
Very good. Commissioner Pope.
One last thing, again, backing up to the select committee meetings. Director Apollo, did you want to address the status of the Digital Asset Authority legislation?
Yes, through the chair. Although I will work to keep that quick. And pardon, we jumped a little forward in our excitement here. So we did review the Digital Asset Authority bill. What I will just say at a high level is there's a fairly robust amount of alignment between the feedback from this body, the existing staff comments in the bill draft that we had all seen, but also from the other legislators on the select committee. I think a lot of the feedback was again around the paradox of the probably appropriate segregation of duties in a larger digital asset authority with stable coins, real world assets, custody, digital identity. But paradoxically, that would grow government a bit. So just thinking about what that looks like. And on that note, it does sound like there's more interest in moving forward with one holistic authority that essentially the Stable Token Commission would convert into Digital Asset Authority, and then there could be divisions thereunder for each of those different things. That would allow us to do more methodical rollout. You could take on new functionalities and responsibilities as you have success in other lanes rather than trying to do everything at once. You can have a more granular allocation of finances per, let's say, division, and by series. So those would be benefits. And then there was also, like there was with this body, conversations around the composition of the commission, or the board of the authority, what the right number is, whether these are political delegates or more focused on subject matter advisors with potentially qualifications that would be enumerated by this current incarnation of the commission and potentially with input from our agency. Again, that dovetails back to the conversation we just had about, do we have the appropriate marketing, growth, biz development experience? Do we have the appropriate legal and financial and technical experience? Or does that, chip away too much of our interface with the state government that wants to have, a hand in the success here, and we'll be working with the legislators to make sure it goes forward. So I think there's still a number of discussions to be had. It does seem like the feedback was taken quite well by the co-chairs and others. And I am happy to share whatever feedback I get or next draft as appropriate that I'm able to share with this body. I will perhaps just quickly, I think he might have to drop shortly as well, but Commissioner Revel was put on the spot a few times during that conversation around the composition of the IFC and what that looks like. So I might ask if we would recognize him if he's still on the line here.
Commissioner Revel, if you're on.
He is no longer on.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Pope.
That was a very good, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a very good recap. Functionally, and I remain part of the working group for that legislation as well. But functionally, there's a question or a mulling about of whether we expand the Stable Token Act through changes to it, or whether there's a whole new body of legislation that that overlays that and then pulls it in. And that's the next discussion before the next meeting. And then if I think they both accomplish the same purpose, except the Digital Asset Authority in one instance would just grow out of this body. And this body would cease to exist as a separate entity, which is one of the concerns we had earlier on as well. So that there's that question, and as Director Apollo indicated, there's a question of how is this board selected, and we will be refining that before the next select committee meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will move us on to our rulemaking update, and I will try to be a little bit expeditious with this one, just keeping an eye on the clock, because there are not really any surprises to this. So we have two sets of rules that are currently working towards promulgation. Our reserves management and token management rule sets were both amended as a result of the statutory updates from this most recent legislative session. So just going into bottom of page 1, first rule set we address here is reserve management. I think everyone is well aware of what those rules encompass. They were promulgated July 31st of 2025. This is the first time we are making any changes to these. We did present the changes and approve the changes with this body back in April. We're now working through the process of promulgating the rules, which requires public notice and comment period of 45 days. We have just now finished that period for both rule sets, which we did in parallel. And if you go to the top of page 4, we've received one comment on the reserves asset rules. So what we've done in these instances, we've received a plurality of comments. We'll summarize them, but when there's a small number, we typically just go through them in regards to what we heard from the public and our suggested response. And we also want to indicate whether or not we believe there's any substantive or non-substantive changes or revisions suggested, because as a reminder, if there are substantive changes that would extend what we're trying to do with the rules, we may have to go back for another round of edits and public comments before we could promulgate anything. If there's a natural extension of anything in the document, we can consider that a non-substantive revision, continue moving forward. But with this particular instance, we received a comment on Chapter 3 of our reserves asset management, particularly around changing investment options. I will notice that this is not tagged to any specific section, but the comment, which you could see here on page 4, was in opposition of changing investment options of public funds from the initial Wyoming stable token statute. However, what we flag in our response is that this body is not responsible for the permitted investments backing the token. Essentially, we believe this comment is reference to the expansion of the permitted investments to include the Rule 2A7 fund, or essentially the SEC's 17 CFR Section 270.2A7. It's a money market mutual fund regulation under the SEC. That was something that was given to us as a potential enablement for the future. It is the model that Circle has with BlackRock for their reporting on their reserves. There's certainly an argument to be made, and I think it's one of the things we discussed at that point in time, which was we might be able to engender more confidence in our program with that level of disclosure. However, it's not something that we've necessarily driven towards with any expediency, because it would cost more money. And B, we now have daily attestations anyway. So if anyone wants to look at what we have in our coffers, what's backing the token, we have all of that. So again, you can see my comment there. You can see my response. Again, I'm just summarizing a bit here. But net, we felt this comment would not require any changes to what we have drafted so far. So I'll give everyone a minute to read that, and then let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, any comments or color? Treasurer Meyer.
I just want to clarify that the deletions that we had on the bottom of page 4 are contained in another section of law. That or actually it's page 2, excuse me, as far as being recorded and confirmed transactions. I think that's all part of the regular business thing. I don't believe it has to be said, but I want to make sure that we're not taking it out and it's omitted.
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, you have admittedly jumped a little bit ahead of me.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
Sometimes I get on the wrong page. Yeah.
Yes. In the rulemaking update memo, we're on page 4 looking at the public comment received. What you're referring to is additional edits on the top of page 5. I had put here chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, but realistically, the only edit I wanted to socialize with this team outside of just a formatting change is the definition of solicited assets. And we will be visiting our solicited assets policy after we wrap with the rulemaking. But since we're there right now, I will just say for both Chapter 1 of the token management rules and the reserve rules, we've updated the definition of solicited assets and the corollary definition of unsolicited assets. Rather than trying to define digital assets in this rule, we've invoked the term digital assets as the proper term relating back to Title 34 in our statute, which covers all of this. We've added financial institutions to include any fiat we receive. So we already had, based on the rule, the ability to take in fiat. We just wanted to specify that it's not going to a digital wallet, which is how it was when we were doing a bit more of a deeper dive on this. There was some confusion because about publicly disclosed digital wallet addresses, but you can't receive fiat necessarily at a digital wallet. So we wanted to again, invoke the definition of financial institution, which is in the Stable Token Act. Again, we're just referencing our statute. And then we removed that last line about originating from external digital wallets because we felt it was extraneous. By definition, a digital asset that we receive has to be transferred to us from a digital wallet. So we didn't feel that that added anything and added to some confusion. So just
You
trying to
can't
tighten that up.
Get anything from to your digital wallet unless it comes from a digital lock
Exactly.
wallet or a digital bank or whatever, right? Okay, all right.
Okay. So with that, we did look at all the comments I wanted to provide on the reserves management rules. We looked at the comment from the public. We looked at that update the definition of solicited asset. Any questions on the reserves management rules as we look to fully promulgate this rule set?
Members of the commission, any,
Yeah, I guess a digital asset, Mr. Chairman, would be, you could actually get it from a credit card because that's considered a digital transaction, isn't it?
Well, if we wanted to get through the chair, if we wanted to get quite specific on what that is, the digital asset term is referring to how that is defined in Title 34, Chapter 29, digital assets. Section A, Romanet 1, digital asset means a representation of economic, proprietary, or access rights that is stored in a computer-readable format and is either a digital consumer asset, digital security, or virtual currency, which are subsequently defined there. So while the first half of that definition could apply to something like a credit card, I think what the state has done is really specify that digital asset has to be one of those more, even more granular things.
Okay, all right. Just, it's like when people say I don't like digital, I says, we've been doing digital since 1970 or whenever. What was the first credit card issued? I don't know. Long time ago. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Are there other comments on this topic?
No.
I don't hear any, and we're Director, we're considering these rules inclusive, or are we doing each set of rules separately? We've kind of bounced around a little bit.
Yes, well, solicited assets, Mr. Chairman, solicited assets does come up in both of the rule sets. We have bounced.
Yeah.
The way I have this memo written, it would be we can do the motion on reserves management rules, then the token management rules. We're not going chapter by chapter, but we can just do one rule set then the other. Or if you'd like to take them on at the same time after a quick.
Yeah, well, that's up to the commission. Commissioners, how would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I think we can go ahead and go over the token management ones as well, and then make a motion on both of them, perhaps.
That sounds fine to me. Okay, is there anything more on digital asset reserves? If there is none, then please proceed to token management.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So now on page 6, token management, again, very much the same preamble, just highlighting which chapters were originally promulgated for token management, which first went live on January 14th of this year. You can see there the original cadence with which we did that. You can see in section C, the amendments that this body made and agreed to back in April at our special meeting that we had on this very topic. Again, going to the public comment received, we received one public comment from one individual. This is, again, I think the section that's referenced may be a little misplaced. But if you were to read the comment, it does seem what this comment is opining is they are looking to curtail, on one hand, perhaps the authority given to the director, or perhaps this is intended to be about solicited assets, although the reference is off. But this commenter also shares concern around the use of public funds. However, this whole chapter 6, candidly, none of it really has to do with public funds. Solicited assets are not public. The unsolicited assets are not public funds, and we just segregate them separately and we just let them sit there unless a legal an entity with enforcement authority tells us to move them. And then for solicited assets, we've got a whole policy to go over that covers those, but those would be essentially donations, right? It's also not public funds. So that's how I've structured the response here. And again, you could take a second to read all that. When it comes to section F, very much the same thing we just saw on the reserve side and the token management side. We have the definition of solicited asset and unsolicited asset. Those are all now hybridized with the exact same commentary on both of them. So I will pause there for any questions.
Thank you. Comments? Are there any? And Director, I think perhaps a piece of the public comment goes to the perception of a lack of oversight and control. That's something this commission has wrestled with quite a bit, trying to balance oversight and control with the efficiency of operation. Auditor Racines, hate to put you on the spot, but all of this is going to be subject to audit and publicly available. Would that not be true?
Mr. Chairman, as required by law.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, as a quick response to that, again, this would be part of our broader financial set, right? So when we get into, again, jumping forward, when we get into the solicited assets policy, we have very much language in there around our disclosure of how any kind of solicited asset would be used, reporting into the commission, reporting to the person who's providing that solicitation. So that is all well taken and well in there.
Very good. Thanks. Well, further comment, if there is none, I would consider what the next steps would be, and that might include the motion that the auditor had recommended a bit ago.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Auditor.
I would move the reserves management and token management rules for final approval into my motion. I would like to incorporate the red line non-substantive changes to the definitions of solicited assets and unsolicited assets to both sets of rules proposed by the director.
Second.
It's been moved. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So now moving on to our last section. And again, I will try to be expedient with time here. So 2 new policies we wanted to get in front of this body. You have a policy update memo, which gives you a synopsis of what they are. One is the communication coordination policy, which is intended to ensure that we are speaking, whether it's the agency amongst itself or the agency with commissioners, when we have inbound requests for interviews, media quotes, whether verbal or written, that we have an opportunity to discuss those together and make sure we have a unified message and make sure that everyone has the most up-to-date and current information about our operations before any kind of formal response is granted. The second policy, still on the update memo, is the solicited assets policy. We just talked about solicited assets. We'll get into the weeds of that a little bit, but without any opposition, I will quickly get us into the communication coordination policy that you have next in the docket.
Thank you. Is there any comment on the? Yeah, please.
Make sure that what you're saying is that if we're asked as a commissioner, what is the commission doing, we refer everybody to you?
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, if we were to summarize this document in one sentence, that is roughly accurate, but I want to be specific about one thing, what can and cannot be compelled. So if you were to look at section 4.1 towards the top of page 4, if any members of the agency, i.e. my team, are asked for a comment, which we refer to here as a communication request, there is a compulsion that they come to me and make sure that we're aligned as a team. And that would include things like speaking at different events. That is not something that I, as the director, have the ability to bind the commissioners to, nor would I
just want to
want.
be clear, though, that if there's been publicly, I guess, anything that's in the public domain, you know, that is part of the materials that we use, I see no problem with, you know, telling people what it is necessarily. When you get into things that, you know, what business deals are you looking at, which maybe has some confidentiality in it, I think that those are things that you avoid actually sharing until they're in the public domain.
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, back on page 1, that third paragraph, this is meant for inbound inquiries, requests for verbal or written comments, media inquiries or interviews, speaking opportunities, event attendance, or other public appearances, which are what we're referring to as the communication requests.
Section 3 what?
I'm back on page 1, the third paragraph. Whereas members of the commission or commission staff, as defined, may receive from time to time requests for written or verbal comments, media inquiries or interviews, speaking opportunities, event attendance, or other public appearances. So if you're in, I would be very specific, if you're in a meeting with a potential vendor, potential user of the stable token, potential license service provider, that's not really what we're trying to cover here. What we're trying to address is the increasing amount of inbound we're getting from local and national media, including international media. And as those messages get sent around to multiple commissioners and members of my team at the same time, we're looking to make sure everyone's aligned, is really what we're trying to get at here. So again, if any members of my team, C-suite or other, receive something, they are required to bring that to my attention before responding.
Okay, do we have and I haven't looked at the website, do we have a frequently asked questions area?
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, yes, we do.
That.
Yep.
And we can basically, I guess, if we're in a forum and there's a question and it's in part of the frequently asked questions area, we can actually respond with what's on the website.
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, that is correct.
All right.
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Meyer, the point here is just to try to keep a discipline on how the commentary goes.
Yeah.
Because as it becomes, there are several members, and as they, you know, speak
Right.
and others, you know, there can be miscommunications or misinterpretations of communications.
Right,
So
right,
I think
right.
that's really helpful. Thank you.
So through the chair, I think we've addressed what we have in section 4.1 at the top of page 4, which is approval required from the commission staff. In section 4.2, bottom of page 4, going on to the top of page 5, this is for the commissioners or their staff. We cannot compel commissioners on what they can and cannot say, nor do we intend to. What we're trying to establish here is just best practices to let us know that you're receiving these communication requests, and making reasonable efforts to discuss with the director or their designee before responding. This is simply meant to create a bit of a framework and process. Again, we're not trying to bind commissioners. We appreciate the diversity of thought we have in this body. But we obviously are moving quite fast in many different areas. So we want to make sure that if comment is being, you know, the requests for comments are being sent around to multiple people, that we're all just simply aligned and on the same page. And again, recognizing that there is oftentimes time sensitivity into these responses as well.
Yep.
You know what would be helpful
Commissioner
is
Meyer.
if we had a QR code, a card with a QR code, you know, it's just basically, yeah. In that way, when somebody asks us something, we can give that to them and it'll take them immediately to the website exactly where they need to be. And then there's no third party interpretation. But yeah, something that we can electronically just, cause I get questions on this and, and I can ad lib a little bit and tell them where we're at. I don't get into the details, but yeah, that I think would really be helpful when we're out in the public and we're trying to get this thing to where it's understood and there's no, as you say, misinterpretation. So PDF presentations, different things like that might, as you're out and about and people want to know about it, then they get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Okay.
And through the chair, just a quick response to that, Commissioner Meyer. That's exactly what we're trying to get at here, right? So if you're getting that inbound and people want to know the latest and greatest, we have a fact book that's very robust. We've got that 2-page brief. That's a simple solution. We've got, QR codes behind all of that. So this is exactly what we're talking about. If someone comes to you with those types of requests, we can very easily, within minutes, give you the exact information you need to point them in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. All right.
Any other questions on the communication coordination policy?
I don't see any.
Okay. Well, then again, the director's recommendation would be a motion to approve it as drafted or amended. Again, we could take that, I would give it to the body now to either take that now or to do these as a 2-in-1 when the time comes.
That's fine. I can entertain a motion to approve that.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the proposed communication coordination policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Racines. Is there support for the Commissioner's motion?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Thank you. It is seconded and the discussion is now open. Commissioner Pope.
All right, so I get a lot of these requests. Most of them deal with the history and of the movement, both digital assets and up to and including the stable token effort. And I will almost always agree to those requests. And I don't have any issue notifying Director Apollo when those requests are made so that he understands that they are being made. However, I will rarely say no unless I get a direct request to cease from the chairman of this commission, and which I will always honor that. But I think that if there's any design on putting constraints on my ability to do that, then I would suggest that I would vote against this.
And Commissioner, I think, Director, that is not necessarily the intent of this at all. I would think that each of us, when asked to speak about this, could differentiate between, this is the history, this is what we've done, these are the things we've got, and here's my particular opinion on what we need to do going forward. Because I think all of us are sort of from time to time given those opportunities. And I think if it's like, the state of Wyoming fully 100% backs, X endeavor, Y endeavor, I think that probably gets a little problematic. But on the other hand, that straight up, I think there's no intent here to constrain commissioners beyond their own ability to make their own judgments about them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more ask in this.
Sure.
In 4.2.1, I think that I would be more comfortable with the shall endeavor to notify the director or their designee before any commitment is made.
If you want to make that as a proposed amendment, I'll see if it has support. Commissioner, it's been seconded. All right, now we're on the amendment. Is there any discussion? Okay. if it's up to me, I would say let's go to the vote. All in favor of inserting endeavor in section 4.2.1 after shall and before notify, endeavor to, I guess. Say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay.
Which means whenever somebody asks me, Anthony, about the stable token, I'll text you.
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, thank you. And again,
Okay, and get that QR code out and you can either send it digitally or if people want to take it, cards are cheap. I'll even pay for mine.
Okay, we're back on the main policy. Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? That motion carries.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we will make that update before we host anything. Again, no intention here to curtail anything. And, just so we even have our own awareness of what's being potentially written so we can post things on social media and have a better idea of that cadence. So thank you for that. Moving on to our last document of the day. Again, this one is a bit more robust, but I will try to hit the high notes quickly as we can. The goal here is to create a fairly granular policy around our handling of solicited assets. Again, this is now downstream of the enablement granted to us at Wyoming Statute 40-31-106E, i.e. the amendments to the Stable Token Act that allow us to take in federal grants, charitable contributions, other donations. If we're going to do that, we want to be very specific about what we're taking in. So going through our definitions quickly, a couple of things I want to highlight. One is at the top of page 4, item number 3.2, acceptable digital assets. So what we're trying to communicate here is that we do not have an intent to take in any digital asset that someone sends us as a solicited asset. We're not going to be taking in non-fungible tokens. We're not going to be taking in meme coins, as they are colloquially known. We have a specific subset of assets that we will take in. We've put those in 3 buckets. One are payment stablecoins issued by a permitted payment stablecoin issuer under the Genius Act or under a state regulatory regime deemed substantively similar by the Stablecoin Certification Review Committee. And that's the body at the federal level that is dictating whether a state framework is akin enough to the Genius Act to appropriately regulate any privately issued stable coins with a market cap under $10 billion. Once you're over that $10 billion, you have to go to the federal charter. Subsection B of acceptable digital assets would be the native token of a supported blockchain. So this would be, for example, the Ether currency on the Ethereum blockchain. These are things that we already have in our possession. These are things we use for those gas fees to power transactions. And the final one would be Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. And I want to specify for the Genius Act compliant ones, these would all be on our supported blockchains, right? So we're not taking in digital assets on platforms that we have not done our diligence on, and this body has not ratified as a supported blockchain. A, because we wouldn't have the technical infrastructure to take it in anyway. And then B, we want to make sure we've got levels of compliance built into this process. So that's acceptable digital assets.
Director, a quick question on that. And I'm curious about the valuation on this with the volatility associated, particularly with Bitcoin, but some of the others as well. I think Ethereum took a hit the other day too. So I'm just curious if we've contemplated how we deal with that.
So, Mr. Chairman, jumping forward a bit, Section 6 is solicited asset treatment. This is where we talk about how we value and do the disposition of any kind of asset with that kind of volatility. So doing a mark to market at the time we receive it, our ability to liquidate a given digital asset into cash or hold it. That is what you will find in subsection 6.3.1 as an example. Conversions account for any pricing variation, realized capital gains or losses, reducing the amount by any transaction or gas fees. So we've looked to consider all of that in this as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meyer.
what about the third party risk that we may assume when we take that and we wanted to immediately move it into dollars and that transaction is stopped and the cryptocurrency falls like a rock? Do we have any insurance or anything that would allow us to marginalize our risk in these situations, whether it's a fiat currency coming in or any other type of a currency coming in? So what's our protocols on that?
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, that would likely be more operational than technical.
Yeah.
One of the things we keep harping on, and one of the small but potent edits we made to that definition of solicited asset, is around the stated intent of the commission to receive an asset. So if we are looking to bring in some amount of cryptocurrency, as an example, one of these native tokens at a time of high volatility, we would probably simply ask that the funds don't be sent until that period is done. Once you get into the weeds of that, we could, in terms of specific transactions and front-running transactions, there's numbers of protections in there, but that's getting into minimum extractable value at a transaction level, and that gets pretty technical pretty quick. There are protections there as well that we invoke with a number of our partners that have that technology built into their suite. But in terms of if someone wanted to send us, one Bitcoin is going to equal one Bitcoin. It is incumbent on us as a body to make sure we receive that and liquidate that at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I think I'd be more comfortable with a transaction language that would say that if somebody wanted to buy $100 of stable token, then the amount that would be transferred to us would be equivalent to that $100 in the transaction finished after we got our treasuries bought. So essentially what they're doing is that they would take the currency that they're using, whether it's fiat or something else, as soon as the transaction cleared that we had that many dollars of treasuries in our control, then the transaction is closed, rather than them giving us money that at the time is $100, but is subject to deflationary or market adjustments. So I'd say, contemplate doing the transactions in that regard. So we know that we're 100% have $100, of U.S. Treasuries before we close the door.
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, in 6.2 subsection 1, we do talk about solicited dollars denominated in U.S. dollars. Those should be functionally one-to-one.
No, they're fine. Yeah,
Right.
that's one-to-one. Yeah, but,
Yep.
yeah.
So, but when it comes to the digital assets, if someone pledges, again, this is donations or charitable contributions, right, or federal grants. I'm hard pressed to think that we can take in a donation and then, go back and ask for more money
I just want to make sure at the end of the day that the stable tokens that are issued, that they are 100% secured at the end of the transaction. So whatever you got to do, if there's some possibility to slide in there, then we want to take that possibility out.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we're pretty well protected, and thank you for the clarification through the chair, Commissioner Meyer. As a reminder, we cannot mint any tokens unless we have the reserves backing them in our account confirmed, right? So we're never going to be minting more tokens than we'd receive a contribution for. And to that extent, and again, we haven't gone through every one of these definitions, but if you were to turn, well, it's kind of embedded in section 4, the forms of solicited assets, we could take in essentially dollars of digital assets, and then those dollars and digital assets could either be what we call restricted, which means they have an explicit purpose behind them, or they could be unrestricted, which is, I'm going to donate 1 Bitcoin for your own purposes. In either of these kind of situations, if the goal for us is to liquidate that and convert to the stable token, that is all delineated in section 4 as to how that would happen. And again, making sure that we're not minting any frontier tokens in excess of what we have in reserve when those dollars settle in our trust account.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the questions that we probably have to deal with down the road will be whether or not to count solicited assets that are in alternate cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin against our reserve requirements, since it will be an intangible, indefinite-lived intangible that we don't want to necessarily count on to meet any reserve expectations that we have. So I think that's something that we can deal with down the road. It is certainly not a primary issue right now, but I think we have to probably, as a commission, vote on whether those get segregated out and never counted toward our reserve, or if we can use a reserve valuation somehow in order to account for that. But
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, let me ask if the director has a response to that.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Pope, perhaps just a point of clarification regarding the reserve. We would not, because the reserves are governed by the trust account. Trust account has to be cash and treasuries and repos. So under no circumstance I just want to be clear, under no circumstance would be holding an amount of Bitcoin, let's say, in the reserve. We would have to definitionally liquidate it to dollars to then purchase the front token. Is that getting at the heart of the concern? Or did I misunderstand?
Mr. Chairman, yes, partially. Our balance sheet, I believe the statute says that we have to maintain excess, or not have to, but after the waterfall, we're building 2% in reserve assets. I didn't believe that it actually said that those reserves had to be held in cash or treasuries, but if it does, then that alleviates my concern. And it's not really a concern. It's just how are we going to classify these for both reserve and asset purposes? And we can determine that and have a policy on that at a later date.
So Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Pope, I appreciate the clarification because it's a good one. Statute does not dictate the composition of the liquidity fund account, which is where you maintain over collateralization. That being said, that is functionally governed by our relationship with Franklin Templeton, both Franklin Advisors as our investment manager and Fiduciary Trust as our custodian. The agreement we have with them dictates that until further notice, the liquidity fund account will be denominated in the same permitted investments as the trust account, because we want there to be compatibility. If for whatever reason we have a depegging event, for whatever reason we fall below that 1-to-1 peg, we want to immediately be able to sweep funds from the liquidity fund account to the trust account. That is why operationally, even though it's not in statute, we have made those mirrors of each other.
Mr. Chairman? I absolutely appreciate that. All I'm saying is that we probably have to have that written down at some point.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think that makes sense. My particular concern is in a peak of market activity. And it's not inconceivable to me that there could be something akin to currency trading and all that sort of stuff that goes on, and just being able to keep pace in a challenging time is, I think, what I'm particularly concerned with.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, taking that away as a task on our side. Again, I think I want to make sure we understand the composition that's statutorily dictated versus vendor investment policy statement dictated. We need something in the middle that's more of a commission position on how we treat this particular asset, which I think would be outside of the solicited asset policy, more of a LFA, liquidity fund account, permitted investments policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Further discussion? Further discussion? All right, what is the pleasure of I believe, well, wait a minute, we've got to wait for our Commissioner Meyer to return. He's gone to the restroom, so I'm not sure we have a quorum.
We do.
We do?
If you vote.
Oh, 4. Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the solicited asset policy.
Thanks. Is there support?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that note, recognizing we're already well over time, I will expediently just say in terms of next steps, we do expect to have our website redeployed in the imminent future. We wanted to have that today. We need a little bit more testing, but we've got a new, much more modern version of our website where hopefully materials are a little easier to find. We'll be sharing that on social media well in advance of the next meeting. We also will be working through the GASB statements as we discussed. We will file all of the changes necessary or the filings necessary for rulemaking, which must be done within 10 days of this approval, which we received. And then I'll just segue immediately into upcoming meetings and events. We are very excited to be hosting a booth at Cheyenne Frontier Days. We will be right outside the main gate near the ticketing office on Friday, the 17th, aka tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. We are very happy to be supported by our partners over at Rain. They're the ones who do the smart card where you could essentially spend stable tokens at any Visa terminal, all 175 million of them worldwide. You can activate that with a smart card that we will be distributing there. We will also be able to virtualize that card and use Tap to Pay with Apple Pay and Google Pay. And through our donation that you now can have from the Avalanche Foundation, we'll have for the first 400 folks who stop by our booth and go through the KYC process to get their Rain wallet set up, we will be distributing 10 front to each of those wallets, which can then be spent at Cheyenne Frontier Days. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. Our next regular meeting will be August 13th. We will skip the September meeting. And ahead of any public comment, I will note that duration of public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaking party or one question from an online participant. Speakers will be asked to provide their first name, last name, and affiliation for the public record per Wyoming Statute 16-4-403B. Decorum will be governed by the rules and standards of Management Council Policy 18-03 and Wyoming Statute 16-4-406. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, matters to come up? Then we are at public comment. We have calling one more time. Thanks. If there's nothing more to come before us, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
It's been seconded. I thought that was going to become a little slow. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.